What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shred Show Live. And you know, it's Wednesday. It's Operation VA. Go, go, go. It is time to hang out with the best of the best in the VA marketplace. And I got two of the best hanging out with me today. I've got the one, the only, Bryan Bergjans coming in. We got your six, ladies and gentlemen. We're both repping the shirt. And we've also got a very special guest, the VA loan boss himself. He's got a cardboard cutout. Not many people have a cardboard cutout of themselves. He has absolutely immortalized himself with the cutout behind him, which is really exciting. But ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about some of the secrets. We're talking about some of the tips that you need to start working in, to start serving our veterans. Even if you're not a veteran yourself, we're going to be talking about it today. There's so much value in today's show. You are not going to want to miss it. Volume up, share it with your friends, tag your real estate agents, because everybody needs to be part of this Operation VA discussion, because we are truly in it to serve our veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? It's time to shred. Guys, I am really excited. First and foremost, welcome Jason Stier. He is a first-time shredder with us today, and he is the VA loan boss. Jason, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Man, first and foremost, the flag in the background. We got the red, white, and blue going on between us as well. It's like we planned that or something. Yeah. That was amazing. But I'm really excited. And Bryan is back, of course. Bryan and I have been doing every single Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. At this same time, you can come and you can join us as we answer questions, as we smash myths, as we really give you the facts when it comes to the VA loan process. And who better to join us than Jason, the VA loan boss himself, talking about some of those things. So before we get too many in, and again, realtors, loan officers, originators, everybody, if you guys have questions, drop them right now in the comments. We'll be sure to get to them during the show. But Jason, before we get too far into it, I would love to hear a little bit about your background. How'd you get started as an originator? How long you been in the business for? Kind of give us a little bit of background on you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for you guys for doing this. The more we spread these messages about the VA home loan benefit, we all win. So I appreciate you guys, a lot for taking point on that. But I started in the origination business about 18 years ago.
Wow.
So early 2000s. Actually got in the mortgage business on a kind of a dare, honestly. But it worked out. But I traveled through different avenues and different channels, and I learned a lot over the years. Lived through 2008, as some of us have, and which was an interesting time in this business. But kind of leading into where I am now, it's my whole family, all the males in my family served in the military.
Wow.
Going back all the way, literally, my mom's side of the family from Georgia. My great uncle served in the Georgia militia in the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Holy cow, man. That's cool.
From the Georgia archives. Both my grandfathers served in World War II. One in the Navy, one in the Army, both in the South Pacific.
Huh.
And then my father's a Vietnam veteran. Spent 12 months in country working on some special projects. And then my older brother was a combat medic in Desert Shield.
Oh, man. See, so you do have a lot of military background. You yourself, which I know we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes, you yourself are not a veteran, but you have a long history of veterans within your family. That's amazing.
I do. And we're all patriots, and we love this country. And as I've matured in the business, and some would say, my wife would say probably matured just in age. This segment that we see in the military and the active military and the veteran community, to me, was underserved all these years ago. Mm. The VA benefit used to be this taboo thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So for me, I saw a opportunity not only to fill my emotional bucket, because that's what it does for me.
Sure.
Because when I help clients, I think of my dad, my brother, my uncles, and so it means a lot to me that they get the right kind of help. because the benefit can be a little tricky if you let it.
It's true. Very true. And that's just it. And that's exactly why Bryan and I set out on this journey of Operation VA, because again, just like you've been in this business for 18 years, I've been doing this for a long time. Even new loan officers coming into the business, even veteran people who've been in this business for a long time, like it definitely, like, it's a little, sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's almost like taboo. I remember when I first got my VA loan years and years ago, I'm like, oh, I don't know a dang thing about these. Like, how I can't do one of these loans. And I started making phone calls. I'm like, oh, these aren't as hard as I expected them to be. Plus, you have great guys like Bryan these days that can help you through the process. And I know that's something that you do as well. You and I were talking that you don't just educate consumers. Being an originator, you do that as well. But you also help educate originators, realtors, and that's a big part. And that really helps build your business as well.
Oh, for sure. So, I'm just an educator by nature. That's just my DNA, the way I am. And so when I set off on this journey, and that's what it is to me, is a journey of helping the men and women who have served this country, I look at the problems within its own little community, and education was the biggest thing. Sure. Not just on the consumer side, as Bryan can attest, and you just mentioned, but in our own industries, in the real estate and the lending community, it's poor at best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And when you have the heart to serve and to find the solution to the problem, you can go out and educate people, and hopefully, they take that knowledge and spread it to their own spheres. Yeah. Right? Not only Bryan, you guys can attest that veterans themselves are it's like a pack mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, you're talking amongst each other in your own little private Facebook group. You're active duty. You're talking to your guys in your platoon or whatever it is, and it's good and bad, because there's bad things out there that they spread between each other that you and I know, because we do this day in and day out, are not true, because they get told that by somebody else. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I think we have the responsibility as the lending and the real estate community to be better at the education piece and put it at the forefront.
Yeah.
We all win through education.
We all win through education. We go through life learning. We go through life hopefully improving ourselves day in and day out. That's again why Bryan and I, when we first started thinking about this idea, it's like, hey, what can we do to educate? What can we do to give back to this community? What can we do to serve our veterans? And Bryan, I want to ask this because Jason kind of hinted at it, but I mean, I don't know military jargon, so forgive me, but like in your squad, in your platoon, like, does it ever come, like, you guys are a brotherhood, like you guys you have one another's back. We got your six. Is it something that does come up? Like, have you ever had, it may be a little bit different for you just because people know who you are, you kind of have that brand, but do people ask, like, they're like, man, I'm looking to buy a house. Do those conversations come up among the squadron?
Oh, absolutely. It comes up now more than ever. So, dating myself again, I've been doing this for 19 years, and I lived through the 08-09 crisis. And that's when I really started hearing more and more and more about the conversations of the home loan benefit, was during that process, because a lot of military folks were trying to streamline their current mortgages into better rates. And at that time, I was a little green about the whole VA process. I was just learning and cutting my teeth in the business, and really didn't establish myself in this niche yet. But I was kind of forced into it, because every time I would go to my reserve duty weekends, I would get cornered in a part of the room where I would have 15 people lined up asking me questions about the VA IRRRL. And what was happening is lenders were asking for all kinds of weird stuff on IRRRLs. And that's when I realized, man, you know what? That doesn't sound right to me. Let me, investigate this more. And then I started unpacking that, you had a bunch of different lenders requiring a bunch of different stuff that had nothing to do with the IRRRL process. And then that's when I realized, if this is happening here, it's happening everywhere. And then I started brushing up on my stuff, reading the handbook, and just getting knee deep into it, and then trying to troubleshoot for, my brothers and sisters in the Navy. And I was able to, help them pivot and have a positive experience. But during that process is when I uncovered the education gap. And then, the rest is history. I've been carrying that torch ever since. And the funny part of this whole thing is just when I think we're taking 2 steps forward, we take 1 step back. Every time we have, a bunch of positives going on, I hear a story from someone or, see some stuff on Facebook, and I'm like, you can't make this shit up.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's why I love, seeing, folks like Jason out there, just constantly dripping on folks with great content and education on things that literally make a difference of a positive transaction or a negative one. And I think that's where it's important, right?
Sure.
Because you have old guard, you still have the old guard that's still hanging around in our industry, right? They have bad habits, and they are educating the new folks coming in based on their experiences and perspectives. And unfortunately, those aren't accurate.
Yeah.
And so we have to overcome that kind of stuff, constantly. And believe it or not, through grassroots efforts is the only way we're going to make this change, because we can't rely on, NAR or VA central office to do everybody's grunt work. It has to happen from the grassroots on up. Absolutely. And, the more people that are willing to learn and listen, the better we're going to be.
Absolutely. And I want to talk more about that here in just a second. And as we kind of start to segue into that. So Jason, I have to ask you this. I mean, you've been in the business a long time. You're doing loans. You survived the crash. When did it start where you're just like, hey, I'm the VA loan? How did the VA loan boss come to be? Like, where did that even come from? Did one day you're just like, you know what, veterans, I see they're an underserved community. I see this opportunity. I'm just going to go serve them. How did it come to be?
Truthfully, about 3 or 4 years ago, I'd had enough of the mortgage industry, truthfully. The grind of what it is and the everything to everybody loan officer type thing, and trying to remember all the guidelines to every single loan product, which Bryan can attest to is, it'll make steam come out of your ears. To me, it's an impossibility, especially trying to keep up with the FHA handbook. That's
sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
So, I was talking to a friend of mine who I hold his opinion, in the very highest of regard. And we were talking through that, and he's like, what means the most to you? So I started thinking about my dad and my brother's service and all these things. I'm like, that's what I want to honor them by doing what I do. So I literally sat for a few days and I'm thinking about these things. And I'm not a marketer per se, just by nature. I just have these epiphanies that just pop into my feeble brain every once in a while. And I'm thinking, okay, part of our business is marketing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to have the education to back it up, period. And so I'm thinking, okay, how can I put a non-military person out in the forefront and make something that's noticeable? So obviously I'm a Top Gun era guy. That's what I grew up. It still is my favorite movie to this day. And the Carrier Air Boss is the baddest dude on the planet, in my opinion. It controls all the battle space around that aircraft carrier.
Yep.
And so I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, that's a cool dude. He's got cool sunglasses. So I took a picture of me and a picture literally from a snippet from the movie and sent it to an artist and had him made that guy behind you.
That's awesome. And
that's kind of how it was born. And I took that and started building on that education, and as Bryan attested to, we deal with a lot of misconceptions and bad info from the days gone by.
Oh, huge.
The one thing that we can do to take the emotion out of that, because it makes me emotional. Trust me, I have to check myself before I hit enter sometimes, just being honest.
Yep.
Is facts through the handbook. This is fact and data-based information. It's not emotional.
Right.
And the more that we use that, the better off we all are.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how the VA boss was born, and it's just kind of taken a life of its own. I mean, honestly, the joke is people don't even know what I really look like.
That's so funny.
That dude behind you, but it's on everything from a branding and a marketing perspective that I do, because that's what people recognize.
Dude, I love it. I talk a lot about branding, marketing. Every single one of us in the mortgage industry, we need to be building a personal brand, we need marketing. And the VA loan boss is kind of that's a whole separate topic of like building that. And I wish we had more time to focus on that, but we don't today, because I want to continue on this road that you talked about, because again, so many people as originators, as loan officers, as realtors, sometimes we think, or we get this idea in our head because it has just been pounded in us for so long. They're like, well, I can't do VA loans because I'm not a veteran. Like, I can't serve that community. I can't go out and help those people because I don't know enough. And we just feel inadequate, or we just feel like we don't have enough information. But you're a living, breathing example of somebody who has literally taken it to a whole new level of like, not only can you can make your entire business model around it. And again, you can serve these veterans and you can now educate them, because now you've taken the opportunity yourself to like, hey, I'm going to get educated, and now I can go in turn go educate these other people. So people can do it, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, don't be wrong. I had the same reservations or hangups when I first started down this path. I did. I'm like, okay, I'm going through this mental checklist of, okay, I never did it. I never served. I don't know what it's like to walk in Bryan's shoes. I've never been on a deployment. I've never done any of these things. I don't really know the lingo. I don't know any of this stuff. And I said, but through many conversations with some people that are important in my life, Andrew being one of those, Andrew Paul, who, obviously in the Navy served as a SEAL, all those different things. And Andrew and I have had a personal relationship even prior to working together. And he's the one who helped me through that, right? Like, look, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It helps, but it doesn't matter, because what they're going to see if you do it from a place of that servant attitude is they're going to see that you truly want to help them.
Sure.
You will learn things as you go along. And so I struggled with that. But when I finally came around and like, okay, I'm going to do this, the feedback that I've gotten from the servicemen and women that I help on a daily basis, they are actually more thankful that I'm doing it, never served, than somebody who might actually have done it, because they know that there's kind of that unwritten rule. And Bryan, you can talk about this a little more, but that you guys help each other, right? You walked in those same footsteps or stood on those yellow footprints in MCRD or whatever that is. It's kind of like an unwritten thing. Like, you guys are supposed to take care of each other.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm a civilian. And I do this because I want them to understand how powerful this benefit truly is, from building an investment, a portfolio of whatever it is when they PCS to all these different places, or just the fact that people like me have their back.
Yep. No, and I think that's a big part of it too. And Bryan, you and I, because I want to talk about this, because Jason and I, as we were getting, set for the show today, we were talking about some actual numbers, which I think is really interesting. So I want to talk about this. And Bryan, remind us how many military or how many veterans are actually utilizing their VA benefits right now?
Well, I think the last statistic I saw was that like roughly 15%, maybe even less. I mean, it's utilization rate is low. And it has been just because of awareness. I mean, not to kill everybody with stats, but I mean, just remember, VA didn't acknowledge reservist service until like the late 90s. I think it was 1999 or something like that, 98 or 99. And so you had a ton of people who didn't even think this benefit applied to them. So, when you're working with folks that had served during the 80s, during really, kind of what would be quoted as peacetime, those folks didn't even think that they've even earned this benefit. And I can't even tell you how many Vietnam vets that were called to active duty that, I mean, I should you not, that thought that they didn't even qualify for this.
One of the things with them too, Bryan, is the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the old GI Bill had an expiration date on it, correct? Didn't have
back in the day, back in the day,
right? The new one doesn't. But a lot of those guys of that era thought that their benefit actually expired.
Whoa.
That there was an expiration date on it because they attributed it to the old GI Bill. So there's a lot, to Bryan's point, so much misinformation and bad information, and just things that they conjured up in their own mind to keep them from not using it.
Well, and that's exactly why you guys have both set out on this journey of educating not only the originators, loan officers, realtors, but also the veterans themselves. A lot of times they just don't even know. So I want to talk about something along these lines when it comes to numbers, because sometimes, Jason, when you and I were talking about this, is if we think we don't live close to a military base, we're like, well, there's probably not that many veterans around me. Like, I can't get into the military market. I don't live by a military base. I don't live in, Southern California. I don't live in Norfolk. I don't live in Virginia. Like, I live in Utah. There's a couple small, like I've got Camp Williams and I've got, the air base up north, but like it's sometimes we think because we are not next to a base that we are like, well, I can't even do VA loans because there's no veterans around me. That's totally false, right?
Yeah, no. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I get asked this every day. And, what people think is that as an originator, like, well, I don't live around, like you said, Norfolk or, Pensacola or someplace like that. But veterans, especially when they leave service, they go everywhere. They're not going just to places where there's military installations.
Right.
So there are places that have Lockheed facilities or places that are veteran friendly employers, 6 Sauer, all these different places. They might have an active duty installation around them. And one of the stats that I saw, and this is some time ago, but the DOD put out numbers about exiting military, like 1,300 per week are exiting service due to medical retirements, ETSing, all those different things into tours. Well, they got to go somewhere. They don't always go back to a military installation.
Yeah.
They go back to places where they're going to plant roots, whether it's in their old hometown or things like that. So the importance, and they are more of the underserved military market than the people around a military installation. Because that's the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, as an originator. Well, I'm around Naval Air Station Pensacola. Well, heck, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. But if I'm in the middle of Iowa, right, I can see that. But as an originator, we have so much access to data, and I'm kind of like Bryan. I try to be careful with the data dump, but it's important because data is not emotional. Data doesn't lie.
Facts.
Looking at the number of, you can go onto the VA website and download the closed loans by county in the United States and see how many loans are closed in your area.
Yep.
Right. So there's so much access to information that we have. We just, one, have to know where to get it. And two, have honestly surround yourself with a sphere of influence who think like you think.
Exactly. Well, and I love that, surrounding yourself. And if you want to start getting into, which I kind of want to end on here on this note as we start to wrap things up, is you yourself need to get educated. That was a mouthful. I don't know why I could struggle with that one. You need to get educated. So when you're educated, then you can go out. You don't want to just start going out like Bryan and you and have both said. We've been in groups. We've been on calls. We've seen some shit that gets, I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, I cannot believe, like, again, I'm no VA expert in any means, but I see somebody say something and I'm like, whoa, please stop. Like, especially realtors, make sure you have your facts, make sure you have the information straight, but get educated yourself. And then, to your point, Jason, whether you're in Iowa or wherever you are, there are still communities. These groups exist all around the country, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on different channels. You can find these groups and you can start adding value. Don't just jump in and be like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm a loan officer. All you veterans, you should come to me. Like Bryan said, there's a huge amount of veterans out there. 85% of veterans still have not used it. So make sure, there's a plethora of veterans out there. And I want to share this story as we kind of wrap this up. Yep. And I want to end on you guys. But I'll remember this to the day. And Lindsay Litton mentioned this last week, and it was on the show. That this borrower reached out to me. They're like, Josh, remember when you screwed up my VA loan? Which is funny because Lindsay Litton said sometimes you just need to ask. As mortgage professionals, we don't ask. Like like you said, FHA loan, conventional. They say, I've got 5% down, 10% down. Anyway, I have this borrower. We literally closed. We're at the closing table wrapping up, and his or the title agent, who was a good friend of mine, she's like, hey, thank you so much for your service. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? Thank you for your service. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a veteran. And again, this is a referral, a good friend of mine. And I'm like, dude, you didn't tell me you were a veteran. We could have done a VA loan. And he's like, you didn't ask. And I'm like, Whoa. And so we had to wait 6 months later. We got him into a VA loan, but like, it's simply just asking. And sometimes we're not educated on that. Both of you know, as I would say 99% of all transactions that are done today, people don't ask. They're not, unless they're doing a VA loan, they don't ask. Like, some of us don't look like veterans. We just have that in our mentality. Like, we just want the next transaction. But that's why going deeper, understanding our clients and building that long-term relationship is truly helpful. So as we start to wrap this up, Jason and Bryan, if somebody is listening to this, because Bryan, this is our goal. We want to educate. We want to inform. We want to help all you people. And Paul Lucido, thanks so much. Great session. Very, very informative and good, solid insight from both Jason and Bryan. Absolutely. That's why we have great people like Bryan and Jason on the show, is because we want to inform. But for those people, Jason and Bryan, who are wanting to start working their way and they want to serve, they finally have heard it. They're like, hey, today is my call. Like, I'm going to start. I want to get more educated. Where do you both recommend that people start to go to get themselves educated first?
Bryan, you go.
Well, can I take one step back real quick?
Yes, of course.
I don't want to. We talked about, the market in which people operate in, not knowing if there's stats and stuff. So a key business development strategy would be to evaluate your market. If you have a lot of VA medical facilities within probably a 100-mile radius of where you're at, there's a great indicator of a high veteran population. So if you took the heat map of all the VA medical facilities, inpatient and outpatient across the United States, and then you did a heat map of all the veterans, you would probably see they would almost overlap, right? Yeah. So, and there's VA facilities all across the United States. So just know that, I'm in Missouri. We have Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. We got Fort Leonard Wood, and then it's kind of spread out. And in St. Louis, most people used to have the, kind of the perception that there wasn't a lot of vets here. But if you took the statistics on the population of Missouri and the veteran population, it came out to about like 1 out of every 10 men that served in the military, right?
Holy smokes.
So just look at, and all that stuff's provided on the va.gov website. You can, fact find that stuff on your own. But I think more and more people would realize that you do have a pretty good veteran population in your own backyard to start with. That's number one. Number two, don't suffer in silence. That's the thing we use in the military all the time. Do not suffer in silence. If you don't know something, ask somebody, right? I didn't get to where I'm at by sitting there suffering in silence. I found mentors, collaborated with others, asked questions, talked to the VA every day, and was troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. You learn by doing it, right? You don't learn, the VA handbook's great, but the VA handbook's broad in nature, and it's designed that way to give more authority to underwriters to approve loans, to find more ways to say yes. But you don't really learn the game until you start getting swings at the plate. So you have to look at it that way. You're going to learn constantly. And, and Josh, to your point, I can't tell you how many times I failed, right? I mean, you know what I mean? But I learned from them, and I, always had the moving truck scenario in my head going, okay, I don't want my customer to show up to their house or household goods show up and then not have keys.
Yep.
It was always kind of my driving force behind it. So don't suffer in silence. Understand the data in your marketplace. And I can tell you right now, I know more patriots that are better at the VA home loan thing than the veterans out there doing it. So just because you never served doesn't mean that you can't be a great advocate for the VA home loan benefit.
Absolutely. Love that. Yeah. All right, Jason. So let's wrap it up here. Yeah. If somebody's looking to get into that market, if they're like, hey, I see what Jason's doing. He's clearly inspired me. He's an example of somebody who is not active military or who has served. I want to get into this. Where do you recommend they start?
I mean, honestly, kind of like Bryan said, to me, it's all about who you surround yourself with.
Sure.
Right? As many VA loans as I do, and this is one thing that I don't call myself an expert at all, because I'm still learning. Still, we all screw up. I mean, it's just, we're human in nature. There's the human factor involved. But, as Bryan said, is that we all, I mean, I have as many friends in the business that don't work for my company as I do. I mean, Bryan and other people and Mike Pitcher and all these other people that we've surrounded ourselves with, because the mission is most important.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And so when you put yourself, if somebody reached, I feel these questions, I'm sure, as Bryan does all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I get Facebook messages and emails and all kinds of, hey, I need to figure this out, or hey, they don't work for my company, right? But to have those people in your sphere, that's where I would start. And then build on the educational platform.
I like that.
Yeah.
Learn how to understand the VA benefit. And because Bryan said the handbook, compared to the FHA handbook looks like a phone book. The VA handbook does not.
Mm-mm.
And because they give more power to the underwriter.
Yeah,
sure.
Right? But you're not going to know those situations until you come across them. You're not going to understand what household goods means unless you come across that scenario, or somebody coming back from an assignment overseas and what their orders say and where they go. That comes from just getting into the trenches and dealing with it. Having a support system around you that will give you the correct answer and not their version of the truth.
Boom. That's get in the trenches. I saw where you're going with that. That was a good analogy there, Jason. I like that.
Yeah.
But you really do. We all make mistakes. I love that. We're human. I make mistakes. If you're in mortgage, if you haven't made a mistake, you're lying, you're cheating in this industry, because we all make mistakes. Like, let's just be honest, we all make a ton of mistakes. So, and that is something so good to end on for all of you. If you're looking to get involved in the veteran community, if you're looking to get started in VA loans, if you've never done one, don't feel overwhelmed. There's so many great people like Jason and Bryan who have pieces, who are educating all of us. That's why we're doing Operation VA. That's why we do this every single week. There is an underserved community. We talk about being mortgage professionals, and we talk about serving our clients, serving our communities. What better way to do it than to serve the veterans who have served our country, who have given their lives, ladies and gentlemen, for our protection? So there's my let's go. Come on. We need all of you originators behind it. And it's great examples like Jason and Bryan who continue to put it out there and educate all of us. Like Paul mentioned, and Jason and Bryan, even in the comments, get educated, know your stuff. Don't just go out there and pretend like you know what you're doing, because ultimately it's going to come back and bite you. So huge shout out to Jason Stier, my bad. Jason Stier. I almost messed it up. Jason Stier, the VA loan boss. And again, huge shout out to Bryan Bergjans of Caliber Home Loans for joining us as well. These guys are I love it that they're humble enough. They don't even call themselves the experts, but they are at least sharing and doing all their best to educate all of us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you guys to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.